여러분 안녕하세요. 저는 우간다 아니고 와칸다도 아니고 루안다에서 온 모세입니다. 3교시 목토크를 시작해 볼 텐데요. 그를 위해 영국, 짐바브웨에서 아주 특별한 손님을 모셨습니다. 더서 세계 시민으로 살아가는 어린 위안 아프리카의 안에서의 저자인 김 차카네차 님을 소개합니다.
여러분 안녕하세요. I am very, very happy to be here today to meet you all. Thank you very much for coming.
그러면 한국에 오신 것을 진심으로 환영합니다. 여기 모인 관객분들을 위해서 인사 말씀을 한마디 부탁드립니다.
Yeah, just to say that I'm so impressed by your country. It's such a beautiful country. Everyone is so warm and polite, and yeah, I've really been enjoying Seoul.
그럼 이어서 한국 첫인상은 어떤가요?
Well, I've always wanted to come to South Korea to see this country, and it's lived up to expectations. The first thing that really struck me is that even though there are all these tall buildings, you're surrounded by nature, and I love that these two things are together.
역시 저도 처음 왔을 때 똑같은 생각이었습니다. 그럼 본격적으로 책을 소개하기 전에 이제 현재 BBC에서 이제 채널리스트로 이제 활동하고 계시다고 들었어요. 주로 어떤 활동을 하시는지 소개해 줄 수 있을까요?
Well, I'm a very curious person, so I have the best job in the world. I interview and I speak to people every week. So I'm on the radio. That's what my job is.
저도 사람 만나는 게 좋기 때문에 저도 한번 이제 옆에서 많이 배우고 가겠습니다. 아프리카 안에서라는 책을 쓰셨는데 이 책은 어떤 책인지 소개 한번 부탁드릴게요.
Well, Afrikaner is a book about the continent that I call home, Africa. And the book is a way to introduce this colorful and fascinating place. It's a huge place, 54 countries. So the book is just a taste of the different people, culture, food, geography, wildlife. And I hope when you finish reading it, you think, I want to learn more, or ideally, you want to visit it.
사실 친구들이 만나면 이제 옆에서 아프리카에서 왔으니까 이제 다른 나라 말을 들을 수 있지 않을까? 이제 많이 물어보는데 사실은 아프리카에서 거의 1200개 언어 이제 넘어요. 그래서 그 부분이 알고 계시면 좋을 것 같습니다. 그리고 저는 루안다에서 이제 동부 아프리카 지역은 그래도 조금 알지만 다른 아프리카 국가들을 잘 모르는데 책을 통해서 저도 많이 배웠습니다. 좋은 책 써주셔서 감사합니다. 그런데 어떻게 해서 이런 책을 쓰시게 되셨나요?
Well, I love reading. And when I was growing up, I'd read lots of different books. And the books about Africa, there were lots of history books. But I don't ever remember seeing books for young people. And that was something I always wanted to do. And I wanted to write a book that captures what Africa is today, which is a very creative, complex, beautiful, and diverse place.
작가님이 이렇게 아프리카 소개해 주셨는데 저는 루안다 가서 한국대에서 한번 써보겠습니다. 책 중에서 한국에 있는 어린 정치원들이 꼭 알았으면 좋겠다고 생각하는 부분이 특별한 소개하고 싶은 부분이 있으신가요?
I know the presentation spoke about the diversity of the continent, and I would really like to emphasize that it is such a big place. You spoke about the languages, the many languages. In Cameroon alone, I know there's Eleanor from Cameroon who's waving there. And, the 270 languages and dialects spoken in Cameroon alone, And this is a continent with more countries than any other continent. So for me, I think it's important to highlight how big it is and how each country is unique in terms of its geography, its people, and its character. And that's what makes it fascinating.
일단 르완다에서도 되게 작아서 약간 언어는 우리가 뭐 민족 언어가 아니라 공식 언어는 이제 영어, 프랑스어 그리고 타로 모국어도 있고 기냐르완다라고 해요. 최근에 이제 기스와힐리도 추가돼서 그래서 좋은 점은 르완다 사람이면 이제 4가지 이제 할 수 있어서 저는 이제 한국어로 추가해서 이제 사기국어 하고 있습니다. 책을 쓰시는데 힘들고 어려운 점을 없으셨나요?
Yes, yes. Because there's so many countries, there's so much I had to leave out of the book. And if I'd written as much as I would like to write, the book would be very, very heavy.
맞습니다. 솔직히 되게 문화 너무 다양해서 저도 이제 다른 아프리카에서 온 친구들이 만나면 저도 갑자기 이제 이게 한다고 이거를 약간 그런 느낌이 저도 받고 있어서 여러분도 충분히 이해합니다. 그래서 최대한 많은 정보나 친구들이 만나서 듣고 그게 제일 베스트 방법인 것 같아요. 한국에서는 아직 아프리카에 대해서 배울 수 있는 기회가 잘 없어요. 우리는 왜 아프리카에 대해서 관심을 가져야 할까요?
I feel we are all becoming more connected with technology and travel. You know, we have more opportunities to travel, to meet people from other cultures, whether it's here or elsewhere. I know just in this room, we have a Kenyan, someone from Cameroon, Zimbabwe. We have France. We have people from many different places, and I think when we meet people and we take time to learn about each other's cultures, it helps us all to better understand the world. So I think it's really important.
그럼 아프리카에 대한 공부는 어디서 어떻게 하면 좋을지 팁을 한번 말씀해 주세요.
Well, I think the book is a good starting point. But I think you can find something that interests you, whether it's in a particular country, whether it's a particular culture, history or politics. And I think you can just follow that because now online there's so many different resources and ways to explore a little bit more.
제가 봤을 때는 조금 더 아프리카에서 온 사람들이 조금 더 이제 열심히 해야 될 것 같아요. 왜냐하면 제가 한국에 온 지 8년 됐는데 처음에 2015년에 왔을 때 친구들이 되게 말렸어요. 뭐 코리아? 거기 안 좋네? 뭐 정쟁 아니야? 왜냐하면 계속 뉴스에서 이제 북한 이야기 이제 나오니까 근데 몇 년 지나고 막 BTS도 있고 막 오징어 게임도 나오고 K-팝도 나오니까 이제는 뭐세 요즘에 핫한 드라마 뭐야? 이제 뭔가 한국에 조금 더 이제 홍보 잘해서 우리도 홍보 잘해야 될 것 같아요. 이 질문은 저희 개인적인 고민이기도 한데요. 아프리카 지역 워낙 넓고 다양하고 복잡한 분들도 있다 보니 어린 청소년들에게 어떻게 아프리카를 알리면 좋을까요?
I think the ideal way would be to visit. I think that is really the best way. But I think short of visiting, I do think reading, and now there's so much literature, there's so much you can find. You don't need to leave the house to discover a place. And I think there's some really excellent resources. And once you can just pull on that thread and just maybe you can start with a country. There's a country that interests you, you're interested in something about it, and follow on that and just build on that.
단순하게 이제 르완다부터 시작하시면 좋을 것 같습니다. 그리고 약간 여행도 갔을 때 르완다도 추천합니다. 오케이. 답변 너무 감사드립니다. 이제 관중분들 중에서 궁금하신 분들에게 질문 3개 정도 이제 받아보도록 하겠습니다. 뭐 궁금하시면 친구 궁금해요. 마이크.
What feelings did you have when you were writing this book?
Oh, very good question. I think a lot of pride. Just in terms of just understanding how interesting the continent is. But also, I learned so much. So a feeling of I guess if it's a feeling of like learning and, getting to know a place as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't know that there were so many languages inside Africa.
I didn't know either. I was so surprised. I think it's more than 2,000 languages, so it's amazing.
What does a journalist really do, and when did you start your career?
Great question. Well, what I do is, I'll start with when I started my career, which was when I was at school. I worked for the school newspaper in Zimbabwe. I used to write for the school paper, and that's when I decided I wanted to be a journalist. And then, what does a journalist do? What I do is I do a lot of research, and I interview people on the radio. So I'm always researching and finding great guests to talk about different topics on the radio.
First of all, it was such a nice pleasure to meet you in this book concert. And the one question that I really wanted to ask was that before reading the book, is there any place in Africa that is kind of hidden and isn't well known to people, but that you really truly want to recommend?
Oh. Wow, what questions, guys! Great questions. Thank you for that. Wow, where would I recommend? I'm going to say naturally say Zimbabwe, but I won't because I'll resist because I'm from Zimbabwe. You said Rwanda, so I'll say Zimbabwe. The Gambia. I'm going to say the Gambia. It had some difficulty politically, but it's sort of come out of there. And just the geography and the landscape, very, very beautiful country. So that's probably, I'd say, it's less known. People tend to go to other places, but it has incredibly beautiful beaches and incredibly friendly people. So the Gambia.
Thank you for your recommendation, Gambia. And it was really such a nice pleasure to see this interview of you talking about your book.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
I have two questions. So first one is, what is your favorite animal in Africa? Second one, when I visit Africa, where will you offer to visit the place? So what place would you recommend me to visit?
Favorite animal, that's very easy. The pangolin. The pangolin. I think it's a fantastic animal. It's unfortunately in Zim, it's quite rare to see it, but when you do, it's just amazing. It reminds me of dinosaurs. It's just an amazing animal. Visit, I'm going to say Victoria Falls. It's just majestic. It's just an incredible place to visit. Just seeing all that water, it's beautiful. So I'll say the Victoria Falls, definitely. You can't go wrong.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great questions.
How long did you make your book?
Thank you. Good question. How long did it take me to make my book? It took about 9 months, but 9 very busy months. Yeah.
제 한국 친구들한테도 아프리카랑 이런 나라들에 대해 소개를 해주고 싶은데 어떤 것부터 어떤 방법으로 소개를 해줘야 친구들도 관심을 가질까를 궁금해서요.
Well, I guess maybe one way is, what are your friends interested in? Are they interested in music? Are they interested in art? I think sometimes if you find something like that, that's a way to bring something, So if you can find, because there's so many African musicians, maybe connect them that way. If it's art that they love, there's so much art on the continent. So I think that could be a good way. And could I maybe extend that question to you, Moses? What are your thoughts about that? Do you have any?
저도 약간 이제 친구들이 뭐 관심사 알면 조금 더 이제 고시기 쉬워요. 그래서 저도 이제 친구들을 처음에 만났을 때는 되게 이제 루안다 잘 몰라요. 그래서 아까 이제 자기소개 한 게 이제 와칸다 아니고 우간다도 아니고 그 이유예요. 왜냐하면 루안다에서 왔다고 하면은 와칸다? 뭐 거기가 어디야? 약간 이런 느낌인데, 그래서 처음에는 친구들이 이제 만났을 때 조금이라도 막 아까 말씀하셨던 것처럼 노래든 뭐 춤이든 뭐 음식이든 여행지든 되게 다 아프리카에서 되게 있어요. 뭔가 신나는 거 좋아하는 사람들이 당연히 있죠. 조금 더 이제 잔잔하고 조금 이제 힐링 받는 느낌이도 있고, 만약에 음식도 되게 나라마다 다 다르니까 되게 접근은 쉬운데, 이제 친구가 뭘 관심 있어야 하는지 조금 알면 쉽지 않을까요?
What do you like favorite African food?
Oh, difficult question. Spicy tofu. Okay, so this one doesn't have tofu. It's called gurunema tumbu, which is tripe essentially. So it's a stew with tripe. Which it's a stew.
그 BBC에서 저널리스트 하면서 사람들이 인터뷰하면서 좀 유명한 사람 만난 적 있는지.
I have, but it's more politicians. So I haven't met any exciting celebrities like Beyonce or nah. It's more politicians. So famous in certain places, but not big global famous. Actually, I did see Justin Bieber far, far away.
짐바브웨이 음악은 어떤 음악인가요?
There's so many different types of music in Zimbabwe. So, they have the traditional music where, we use a particular instrument called the mbira. Then you have more contemporary music. Unfortunately, we don't really have the way that Ghana and Nigeria and South Africa have managed to kind of create music that a lot of people know across the world. But I'm hoping that we will break through.
First of all, I promise that I'll read your book after this concert.
Thank you.
But
good.
before I read it, can you please introduce a little bit about your country, Zimbabwe?
So Zimbabwe is in southern Africa, and the name Zimbabwe means house of stones. And everyone you meet, every African you meet will tell you, oh, my country is the most beautiful. But Zimbabwe is very beautiful, and I'm not biased. It's a place where there's so much variety just with the geography. You go to the Eastern Highlands, and it's sort of green and mountainous. Then you go to Kariba, where it's much drier and it's savanna. And you have the world's largest man-made lake. And it's not a very big country. It's about 12 million altogether, 12 million people in total. And it's very easy to move around Zimbabwe because, in terms of the languages, the main languages are, we speak English. The education system is in English. But Shona and Ndebele are the main languages. But there are loads of other dialects. And it's just a very... best weather. The weather's always good. And you can find all sorts of animals. Where I grew up, it was a place I live in a very rocky area, so loads of snakes. But also, elephants, lions, everything. It's just a very sort of culturally rich, geographically rich place. Thank you.
여러분, 질문 많이 받고 싶은데 시간이 길지 않아서 아쉽지만 여러분 더 궁금하시면 아프리카 안에서 책을 구매하시면 더 많은 이야기를 배우실 수 있습니다. 그러면은 마지막으로 여기 계신 분들이 한마디 부탁드립니다.
Yeah, just to say thank you so much for coming and taking an interest in this amazing continent. I think just the fact that you're here asking excellent questions is wonderful. And thank you for your attention and your time today. And I've really enjoyed it, so thank you. And can I just say one quick thing, a big thank you to Stephen Africainsight for having me, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, for arranging this wonderful event. Thank you.
오늘 저도 많이 배우고 생각하는 시간이었습니다. 여러분 앞으로도 아프리카 여러 나라 대해서 관심을 많이 가져주시고 그리고 멋에도 관심을 많이 부탁드립니다.